Let's reflect again on a command to rest. In the Old Testament, there are commands about offering sacrifices for sin, laws about priestly rituals, civil commands that dictated how you live together with your neighbors, and cultural laws. Laws that set apart the people of Israel as a distinct people group, as God's chosen people. This is usually the content of the Bible that surface-level readers critique in public. Have you ever heard someone question the legitimacy of the whole Bible because we don't sew our clothes a certain way or avoid shellfish anymore? There's much to say here in response, but for now, know that critiques like that are ignoring the context of story. The famous and strange laws you find in the Old Testament were given by God to the people of Israel, who were a newly liberated people set free from 400 years of slavery in Egypt. They did not yet have an identity. Part of the function of these laws was to establish a new identity. With this in mind, let's consider the command to rest, to Sabbath. At first glance, not really what you'd expect as a law, right? If someone today forced you to stop what you're doing, eat a snack, and take a nap, you'd probably take them up on it. But it's not so simple, right? If we're honest, in our culture, busyness, hustle, and performance are rewarded. Beyond that, even if we're not looking for validation, many of us find it hard to rest because we're worried about all of our responsibilities. Let's consider this idea of identity. God commands his newly freed people to rest because all they know is work. They're fresh off being victims of a system that identified them as only valuable for their work. Their tireless, brutal work. But God intervenes as their liberator, sets them free from Pharaoh, and in great contrast does not command them to build more bricks without straw. He commands them to rest. In this, God is commanding his people to do something that directly confronts their core. If all they know is, my only value is what I produce, when God says you are worthy of rest, it is something surprisingly new and strange. It's an activity that engages with how you see yourself. All the reasons we have for bucking against a day of rest, too much to do, not wanting to fall behind, worries about all of our responsibilities, they say something about how we see ourselves. If it's a worry about too much to do, we might find our security in what we accomplish. If it's a worry about falling behind, we might be too focused on how others see us. If we worry about all of our responsibilities, we might have an overinflated sense of importance or control. If God calls us to something that goes against these false ways of identifying, and we feel that tension, then we should rightly see rest as an act of faith. To rest is a creative act of surrender. In our world, it's easy to feel the pull towards needing to work because work makes us feel secure in a variety of ways. If that's true, responding to God's call to rest is trusting his wisdom and direction over our fears and desires. Rest deals with how we identify ourselves, and God's command for us to rest says that he sees us for much more than only what we can produce. Set aside some time to be alone and find a quiet place. Read Psalm 92, a psalm written to be sung on the Sabbath day. Read slowly and take in the writer's perspective. The psalmist takes time to praise God for his faithful work in his life, remembering all the times God has come through. He then acknowledges that God doesn't ignore the parts of the world that are evil and out of control. He deals with them. It's a way of saying, yes, the world is sometimes crazy, but we can rest because God deals with all the things that trouble us. May you enter into a time of rest, assured that God sees you much deeper than someone who produces.